Our next speaker is Ilmari Kontulainen. He has over 15 years of experience in software industry, startups, entrepreneurship in various roles, from software developer to CEO. Currently, he's working as a product manager at Hoxhunt, a disruptor in cybersecurity training and one of the most or fastest growing SaaS company in Finland. In his presentation, Ilmari talks about North Star framework and shares his learnings about how to use that for product strategy work. Ilmari, the stage is yours.
Thank you. So, the agenda. Maybe I'll tell a little bit about myself, then go through the North Star framework, what is it about, and this presentation hopefully will give some concrete tool that you can take away, or at least idea, something to try within your organization, whether it's within your team or whether it's within anywhere else. So I'll introduce the framework, and then I'll also give two examples, one from the product development team, and then one from another context, so from a content creation team. So this is going to be I'll try to keep this very, very practical, and then lastly I'll share some lessons learned. Okay, but as said, I have quite long work history, or at least variety in my work history. So I have done everything from being a customer support representative to being a CEO in a small company though. And I have also tried my hands at vertical farming, so actually growing herbs inside a building. But now I'm working as a product manager. But the past has given me kind of wide view on different things. And yeah, on my free time I do some endurance sports and advisory work, etc. But okay, so Hoxhunt is a human-first cybersecurity awareness platform. We have roughly 1 million users, and we essentially send out over 2 million simulated email threads monthly to our users. I will show an example very soon, so you understand the context, because the examples are about that. We have roughly 100 employees. We're constantly growing, but the current headcount is around 100. Only 4 development teams, so we are not the most biggest organization out there, but still, and we have mainly 2 customer-facing products. Okay, and so my responsibility is the training side, which also a quick demo. So this is what we do. We send essentially phishing emails to our users automatically and in a smart way. So each of the users have their individual learning path, so everyone gets the training that they essentially need. Okay, but how it works is that we send this out to the users, our customers, and then because the users need to spot the emails and report them using a email plugin. So at the top of the screen there is this small icon of the shield. So if the user clicks that, it will open then a window that says that, hey, you catched one, and then we will teach them a little bit about what they should have spotted from the email. So for example, here the email sender domain is actually not slack.com, but instead it's slack.eu.com. So we're going to teach them to detect the phishing emails. Okay, and then we have all sorts of engagement functionalities there as well, such as levels or shields and achievements and leaderboards and whatnot. But just to give the kind of introduction to what do we do actually. And then how do we do it? So what is the typical product cycle, or how does the product development look like for us? So we identify leverage points or pain points from the feedback we gather from customers, stakeholders, whatnot. We create assumptions, hypotheses, and of course connect all that in the past learning. And then we conduct the strategic planning, and the North Star framework connects very well to the strategic planning and to the prioritization, which is then the next steps. And we use we call them like Hox missions, but they're essentially like business cases for the problems that we consider worth solving. And then we of course have roadmaps and like what not. And we choose, like, based on the prioritization, we choose the item to work on. Okay, plan, execute an experiment. Sometimes that's a prototype. Sometimes that's a like actual feature that we built. Okay, we ship them, we celebrate them, we give hold like a small retrospective. Then we learn, so we gather the feedback both from the customers and then end users, but also from the data. We measure them. We build like an impact analysis, and then we kind of do another retrospective to see what we learned, and then it starts all over again. Okay, and so the North Star framework connects to all this. So the North Star framework is like a model for managing products by identifying like a single crucial metric that best captures the core value that the product delivers to the customers. And what are its like impacts? So it should help in prioritizing and accelerating the decision making. It should help the teams align and communicate around the like unified vocabulary that was mentioned, but also around the, of course, the unified goal. And it should also like enable the teams to focus on the impactful things. So what really matters to the business. Okay. The North Star framework itself is a simple framework. I like simple things because it's easy to talk about simple things, and they're usually the most effective. So it has like 4 components. So the first one is the actual North Star metric, and we'll define it soon. Then there are the like mid and long-term business results and customer values, and we call those also like lagging indicators. So those are something that follow if we focus on improving the North Star metric, but those are not something that we should like focus on primarily, but they're the kind of like end result from that focus on the North Star metric. Okay. Then we have input metrics, and the input metrics are basically KPIs, but they should all contribute to the North Star metric in one way or another, and I'll show the connection later. And those we call leading indicators. And then there's naturally the 4th step, which is the work. So the actual experiments, or whether it's like development work, whether it's like validating assumption with a prototype, whether it's something else, but the actual work. So the initiatives, the development work. Okay, so we go this through like one step at a time. So first, starting with the North Star metric, and so the North Star metric itself should be like a single critical rate, count, or ratio that represents your product strategy. And the purpose of having like a single metric is that there's like clarity and alignment. So we create this like focus that we all know that, hey, this is the one direction that we need to go, and then the discussion can go to the like more insightful things like how do we actually get there. So if we know what is the North Star or where it is, then it's easier to talk about, okay, so what would be the best direction there, rather than talking, for example, hey, this seems cool or that seems cool. Okay. It's also like used to communicate the impact and the progress. So if we can see that it's constantly growing or increasing, we can be fairly sure that we are doing like doing the progress. Of course, we need to have a good North Star metric in order for that to work. But then there is also like the accountability to outcomes, and this is good for the teams. So at least like I have had experiences where teams want to strive towards some like, let's say, pet features, or like something that they just think that is very, very cool, but not necessarily yields to the outcomes that actually help the organization. So the North Star metric creates this accountability to the outcomes, that like if something that we do doesn't contribute to the North Star metric, like should we do it or should we prioritize, or like how much time do we want to give to those sorts of like initiatives. Some attributes of the North Star metric. So it should measure the moment that the customer finds value from your product. So this is all like kind of like product-led strategy, that type of thinking. So here the North Star metric should measure the moment that the customer finds value from your product. It should also represent the core of your current product strategy, and it should be like a leading indicator of the future business outcome that your company cares about. So it should be like that. Let's say that we have a North Star metric and we focus on improving that, and then of course the company cares about, let's say, annual revenue rate or whatnot. It should also like lead to those. There are 4 dimensions in the North Star metric that you could choose, or at least like based on this definition. So the North Star metric should describe like the breadth. So as an example, number of new users, depth. So number of, as an example, there would be like number of items per order, frequency. So for example, like order per month per user, or efficiency. So for example, like percentage of orders delivered on time. And it would be good that the North Star metric covers at least two of these dimensions, but at least based on like my experience, it's hard to cover all 4 in like one metric that you follow. But then when we define the North Star metric, we can also use this kind of like checklist. So starting from the top, like does it express value? Can we see why it matters to our users? Does it represent the vision and the strategy? Is it a leading indicator? Okay, a little bit repetition. Does predict like future results rather than past results? So that's why, for example, this like annual revenue rate or like average customer value or like these are not maybe necessarily the best North Star metrics, but they are rather the lagging indicators that happen if you focus on your North Star metric. Okay, is it actionable? So can we take concrete action to influence it? And this is especially like important when you're aligning like the teams to commence like right work. So if we pick a metric that the teams cannot, for example, influence themselves. So for example, this like annual revenue rate. So the teams might not have the ability to actually influence it. So it might be like a bad due to that. And also like sometimes like if you're working in a very technical environment, is it understandable also by the non-technical people? So because you might come up with like a very nice metric, but if it's not like understandable, there needs to be this common vocabulary and common language with both the technology organization and the business side talk. Yeah, of course, is it measurable? Quite obviously, we should be able to measure it, like if it goes down or if it goes up. And then, like when it changes, can we be confident that the change is meaningful and valuable? So sometimes it's easy to kind of get like, for example, a vanity metric. As an example, we were thinking, should we use like a relative metric or an absolute metric? And we realized that if we would use an absolute metric, the metric could actually like rise, even though we wouldn't do anything. I will explain the example later. Okay, and then lastly, when you think about your North Star metric, you can also consider like what game are you playing, and there's essentially 3 like main games you can play. So the attention game. So how much of your customers' time can you capture? The transaction game. So how many commercial transactions does a user make, for example, and the productivity game? So how many high-value tasks can the customer perform with your product? Yeah. Then we go to the examples. So here's like most of them are imaginary, except the last one. That's the outcome of like our North Star framework workshop. But so if we think about, for example, Spotify, so their North Star metric could be, for example, time spent by subscribers listening to music. Okay, Facebook could measure users spending more than 5 minutes per day on the platform. Amazon could have, for example, average number of purchases per Prime subs, and Salesforce could, for example, have average number of records created per account. And then for us, we didn't get that nice of a measure, but we still got something. So we choose the monthly percentage of successfully reported simulations by potential user. And here we come to the question, like, is this understandable, for example, by the non-technical people, or like if you don't know the context or something like that. But this was still like very good kind of that we were able to define it concretely. And then if we look at go into the details of the metric that we choose, so it has if we remember, there's the dimensions. So this metric describes the breadth, so the percentage of potential users, and here we use the percentage because, for example, if sales brings us a new customer that has, let's say, 10,000 users, so it's and if we would use the absolute number, then like it would be kind of vanity metric to just look at the absolute number and see that, hey, we are doing very well because the sales is constantly growing the number. But if we take the percentage of so we can measure that how many of those users, those potential users, can we convert into actually using the platform. Okay, and then there's also the frequency, and there is a little bit the same, that we have to use the percentage, and then that measures basically the frequency, how often the users actually report the simulations that we send. Okay, if you look at the checklist, so does this express value? Can we see why it matters to our customers? Of course, these are always like context specific. That is the most important thing is that the ones who use the metric understand it, and so this expressed the value pretty well, at least for us. We thought so, and it also represents the vision and the strategy. So if we get, let's say, 100% of our potential users to report 100% of the those simulated threats that we send to them, we are pretty good state. And then, is it a leading indicator of success? Does it predict the future results rather than reflecting the past? So I have written there maybe, but I actually changed it. It's also yes. So it's a pretty good indication that if we are able to reach that metric. And is it actionable? Well, I'll show in a little bit how the leading indicators then connect to this. But based on that, like discovery, it is very actionable. And is it also understandable for the non-technical people? So there is a little bit maybe. So it's always when you talk about like relative things, it's maybe harder to have the discussion. And I remember also having like some difficulties explaining this to the kind of senior management and whatnot. Okay, is it measurable? Yes. And when it changes, can we be confident that the change is meaningful and valuable? So here we come back to why we choose the relative metric rather than the absolute metric. Okay, so the components, now we have went through the actual North Star metric, and usually when you have this kind of like, let's say, workshop about defining the North Star metric, usually while you are talking about the North Star metric, you come up with a lot of these kind of like lagging indicators or mid to long term business results and customer value related things. So that's why like usually in the discussion you can also list them down, but like understand and conclude that, hey, these are the lagging indicators, these should go there. Yeah. And then we go to the input metrics, which is then like what contributes. So it's a small set of factors that you believe most directly affect or contribute to the North Star metric. And in the input metrics, it's all about like action and results. So you choose those input metrics that you believe that if you do actions towards those, then the results get there. And as an example, if you eat, so I'm endurance, I do endurance sports myself. So if I eat, if I sleep, and if I run, then I can run longer. And okay, as the lagging indicator, I might also lose weight, but that's like a lagging indicator. It shouldn't be the kind of result that I'm after. Okay. The training, like input metrics that we choose, where these are quite maybe obvious, but so we choose the tackle new users, and then user retention, and then also this learning depth. But we weren't able to find like a KPI measure it, because there's like different ways to measure it, and the discussion is ongoing. But you can usually be able to define like a KPI to each input metric. So for example, in the new users, we choose the onboarding percentage and the user retention, the 12-month retention percentage. So what percentage of users are still using our platform 12 months after joining the training. Okay, so we have the input metrics there also, and then the last part is the usual. So discover and deliver. So there we usually have this like product initiatives. So for example, based on like when we started to actually measure and we built dashboards for the input metrics, we actually noticed something super interesting, which was that like our user retention rate was super high, but our like onboarding percentage was actually relatively low. And it was interesting because we had been spending a lot of time developing this kind of like retention related functionalities, but nobody had really like measured like are they actually contributing, or are they creating like an impact. But when we started to measure them, we noticed that, hey, okay, we are doing pretty well here, so maybe we shouldn't put too many bets there, but rather focus on where we are not doing so well, which was the user onboarding rate. And the work, well, it's basically just initiatives like how can we then improve it, and I'm not going to go like too much into details there. Okay, I think I'm starting to run out of time soon. So this was about the like product development team, like how we defined it for the training part. But then we also had like an alternative for a team that was mainly focusing on like content creation. And the alternative is called the North Star statement. And there we have like similar exercise where you basically define this kind of like North Star, but you don't focus that much on the measurement, but rather like to the vision or what needs to happen like in verbal form. And the discussion is usually like super valuable, because it just the discussion itself creates this like alignment and understanding. But this is something that you can like find online, and this is not like I haven't invented this, but these are like basically by a company called Amplitude and John Cutler. So, but yes, lastly, lessons learned. So, using the North Star framework and having the sessions, having the it helped creating like strategic clarity and eased up prioritization work. The discussion and the process itself was like fruitful for the team, because they also like got more understanding why we are doing certain and why we aren't doing certain things. Yeah, it helped align the team and have meaningful discussions. It helped to build business cases for some initiatives that like would have not otherwise been, or would have been buried. So that was super nice, and it has made like personally the product strategy work much easier. And then about the North Star statement, so that was also helpful for the team that did it and it helped like new employees, especially when they go through the results of that workshop, to kind of understand the big picture around what the team is doing and striving for. Okay, I want to give the credits to this John Cutler. He's writing a lot about like product management and about this like North Star related stuff, and like it has influenced like my work and what we do at Hoxhunt a lot, and also this amplitude, and then there's like I think the original blog post about the North Star metric is from Sean Ellis, so you can find that also in Medium or somewhere. But any questions?
Okay, can you give us some like guidelines how often you should kind of change or set a new North Star? So how long have you been running this metric?
Yeah, so I joined the company a little bit more than a year ago, and so I found that there was like, or I felt the need for like understanding better like where we want to go, and so that's why I kind of initiated the workshop, and after since we have been following the same North Star, so you shouldn't maybe change the North Star itself that often, but the input metrics might change from time to time. So for example, currently we are focusing heavily, for example, on the onboarding percentage or something, but let's say that when that is no longer a problem, it might make sense to also focus on the other input metrics. So I would say that as long as you have like a constant product and you have like a constant product vision, then the North Star metric should be like, because it should be aligned with the product vision. But then of course, like if you introduce a new product, then you should like probably conduct like another session for that product. Or if the product vision changes for one reason or another, like drastically, then of course it's good to iterate. But if the kind of the vision stays the same more or less, then because the North Star should be aligned with the vision.
Okay, but you said actually that when you see that, for example, that if you are like looking how sharp the angle is, and if it just start getting lower, then it's maybe time for new input metrics. That's what you are saying. Okay, not the old tricks are not working as good as they used to be.
Yeah,
something like that.
Or maybe even that the input metrics might actually stay the same, but you might actually focus more on that input metric that is lagging behind.
Okay.
Kind of like how we did it. So we saw that we have one indicator that is lagging, which was the onboarding percentage. So we should put our emphasis there. But when we have that like kind of fixed, if you will, then we might actually switch to thinking more about the, let's say, learning depth or or go back to the retention, because it might be that when we get one metric up, then it affects actually the other metrics because of how the end user life cycle and whatnot goes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Hey, quick question about the workshop. You said, who did you involve in defining the North Star?
So in this session that we held with the product development team, so it was mainly the team. So basically one development team. But the main benefit would actually come from running the for let's say if you have multiple teams that you would run it, let's say, within the product development organization. So we have, for example, three product managers. So we likely run that session also like among ourselves. But this session was like so I think this tool can be used in like many contexts to build the clarity and alignment, but then the results help in the discussion with, let's say, other stakeholders outside of the context also. I want to challenge everybody to Google this and try, or at least think like whether you could find value from this and implement it, or at least run the session within your organization. Thank you.
Okay, let's give a big hand to Ilmari. Thank you.